Okay, well, I could go with a few other examples, but let me just make a couple more points in conclusion and then take questions. I think it is important, as I say, both the rhetoric, but also in how we think about government programs. And I think this has been useful to me because, I do try to take seriously when I'm arguing against conservatives. I do try to take as seriously as I can what they say, and sometimes what they say does make some sense. So, I've spent a lot of time, much more than I'd like to acknowledge, defending Social Security because I think it's a great program. It does what it's supposed to. It's a very well-run program. It would be disastrous if we ever let it be privatized or cut back in any substantial way. On the other hand, when I'm arguing against all these people from Cato and the privatizers, they say, well, workers, typical working people should be able to have, individual accounts. They should be able to have stake. They should have more than Social Security. And I don't find that wrong. They should have more than Social Security. Social Security is a core retirement income. But I won't want to live on just my Social Security alone when I'm ready to retire. And I'd like to have see most people have something more. So what can we do that would give them more? Well, this is what we're arguing about, for the legislature in West Virginia today. Can you set up a system of voluntary retirement accounts that are administered through the state? We're stealing George Bush's program, but it'd be an add-on to Social Security, not something separate. And the reason why I consider that valuable is because what you would be doing is, in effect, setting up a state-managed system that would compete side by side with the existing financial industry. And the benefits of that are twofold. One, there's a lot of economies of scale. We could bring in a lot of people in the system that aren't currently there. But secondly, insofar as the private financial system isn't giving people good value for the dollar, in other words, in some cases they're ripping them off, they charge huge fees, well, people would vote with their feet for the publicly managed system. Okay, so I think that's a good way to think about it. You get a good outcome through the market. You're not forcing anyone into it. You're giving people a choice. And I always love to argue with the Cato people. What's wrong with giving people a choice? But I'd say the same, and probably even more importantly, with healthcare. Because, I think of, not that I'm an expert on healthcare, but I have studied a bit, and I would agree with, many, many other economists that have looked at this, that the best sort of system to have would be something like what Canada has, or in fact our Medicare system for people over age 65, a sort of single-payer type system. It has enormous economies of scale. The big problem with the private insurance system is that basically private insurance companies get rewarded by not insuring sick people. That's not saying anything bad about it. That's how you make money. If you're a private insurance company, if you're Aetna or whatever, you don't make money by getting a lot of people who are really sick and going to run up big bills. You make money by getting people who are relatively healthy who are going to send you premiums every month and never send in a bill. So insofar as you could skew your mix of insurees to have more healthy people, that's a very big benefit. Now, this is a great story because, in effect, the conservatives sort of turn things on their head and they say, no, the government's going to regulate the insurance industry to prevent them from cherry picking. And you go, wait, aren't you the guys that told us that dumb government bureaucrats can't do anything and the market's great? So in other words, if we believe that story, we believe that the private sector is so much more efficient than the government, we should believe that the private insurance companies will be very effective in cherry picking and the efforts of the government to regulate them will not be very effective. Okay, so how do you get around this? Well, as I say, a single-payer system I think is the best way to go. It gets around these administrative problems. There's a lot of other reasons why I think single-payer would be the best way to go. But the biggest obstacle in getting there is that, most of you might remember back to the Clinton effort back in 93, 94. It's very scary to people to say you're going to have a government take over the insurance industry. Okay, so what's the best way to do it, at least in my book? It is my book. The best way to do it is basically you make available a government plan, a government-run Medicare plan, in competition with the private insurance companies. You let people buy into it. And in effect, that's what you have had in Medicare. And sort of an interesting story there. When the Republicans took over Congress in '94, they opened the door for private insurers within Medicare, so that they had they had rules that made it much easier to set up HMOs operating within Medicare. Well, within a very short period of time, the vast majority of HMOs had left the Medicare system, and they all said the same thing: we can't make money. Okay, why can't they make money? Because they can't compete with an efficient government system. Okay, well then what happened in 2003 when they passed the prescription drug legislation? Well, along with that, they again opened the door for private insurers operating within Medicare, and this time they put in a big subsidy. It's about 12 or 13% per patient, per beneficiary, compared with the Medicare system. So that's in effect telling you how much they need, how much additional money they need to compete on a level playing field, or not a level playing field, how much money they need to compete with Medicare. They need 12% of a subsidy on top of what Medicare gets for each beneficiary in order to be competitive. Well, if we take away the subsidy, they will go away. Okay, the private insurers will go away. Well, how do we get to a universal Medicare type system? Well, I think you can do it through the market. If you in effect made a government insurance plan, government-run insurance plan like Medicare, available to every individual and employer in the country, you can create a system that would end up probably in a relatively short period of time dominating the market. I don't know if you'd ever end up with everyone in it. I don't know if that's necessary to have everyone in it. But you have something very similar to a single-payer plan like what you have in Canada. Okay, so I think that's, I think you would get there, and by doing it through the market, it takes away the conservatives' biggest argument that you're going to force a government, government-run insurance plan down people's throat, because it's quite the opposite. You're going to make one available to them. You're going to give them a choice. And if they don't like it, they don't have to take it. Okay, well, I'll just sum up there, because I think that's, how I try to think about things, and sort of how I try to push things in my book, that, I don't think we should ever give them the market. The reality is that the conservatives, we both want the market. We both want government. Okay, the difference is that the conservatives want the government to rig the rules so that money flows upward. Those of us who consider ourselves liberal or progressive want the government to structure the system to ensure that people can meet basic needs and ensure that it's fair and that most people can earn a decent standard of living, or I should say everyone can earn a decent standard of living. So we should never give them the market. And the analogy I use in the book is that I think of the market as like the wheel. It's just stupid to say you don't like the wheel. We can do lots of good things with it. We can do bad things with it as well, but it's really just kind of stupid to say you don't like it. Okay, so I'll stop with that.